I've tutored the LSAT. I've tutored the LSAT. I've tutored the LSAT. So hi everyone joining. If you're studying for the LSAT right now, LSAT. Feel free to let me know in the chat. So hi everyone joining. If you're studying for the LSAT right now, feel free to let me know in the chat if you're studying for the LSAT or taking the January test. I know that one is coming up soon. I thought I would go live on YouTube just because I've been going live on TikTok a lot, but not so much on YouTube. So I wanted to try out going live here and going through some logical reasoning questions. If you are studying for the LSAT, you should already have these questions on Law Hub. So I'm going to give a couple of minutes just for people as they come in to go ahead and pull up Law Hub. We'll be working off of test 158. But if this is your first time joining me, I've been going live on TikTok a lot, but not so much on YouTube. I am a third-year law student, as my banner says. I've been tutoring the LSAT for about 5 years. I took it when it still had logic games on it, and I'm actually kind of sad that they took logic games off because I really enjoyed logic games. But I've enjoyed tutoring the LSAT, but I just don't have as much time for it anymore. And I've been tutoring the LSAT. I definitely won't have time for it next year because I'll actually be, thankfully, I already have my job. So I'll be working at a firm in New York City next year, and I definitely won't have time for LSAT tutoring then. So I'm trying out like doing some live things because I really like answering people's questions. That's my favorite part of LSAT tutoring. My favorite part of LSAT tutoring is like answering questions live. So I'm testing out some things here. I've been going live a lot on TikTok. So if you see me over there, hi. We're going to be reviewing some of the things that I reviewed over there this morning. But if you're just finding me for the first time, feel free to let me know in the chat if you are studying for the LSAT. If this is if you have started studying, if you're taking the January test, definitely let me know. I have a lot of students who are taking the January test. So I wanted to give everyone a few minutes just to pull up to test 158. I can't show it myself because it's copyrighted questions, but if you're already studying for the LSAT, you should have access to it. But let me know if you don't know how to get into Law Hub. I mean, I can kind of help. I can tell you just need to make an LSAC account. But if you have any law school questions, feel free to let me know too. I love law school, which is like a crazy thing to say, I know. But I think if you are studying for the LSAT and if you've found me on YouTube or you found me on TikTok, you're already doing like more than 90% of most people are doing, which is just like trying to figure out the logic behind the test. And I've been saying on TikTok, it's really easy when you have a tutor because if you don't understand something, your tutor can like try to explain it one way, and if that doesn't make sense, what I'll do is I'll like try to explain it another way. And sometimes I'll go through like 4 or 5 explanations before I actually get to one that makes sense to my student. And if you have a tutor, then that's great. They can go through those 4 or 5 explanations with you. If you don't have a tutor, then it becomes on you to go out and find all those explanations. So if you're watching me on YouTube or TikTok, then like you're already doing much more than most students are already. And one thing that I also tell my students, and I've been saying this on TikTok, is if the LSAT feels hard and frustrating, that's because it is really hard and frustrating. So if you are feeling like you're burnt out or like your head hurts at the end of the day, all of that is 100% normal, and it should be happening because the LSAT is hard. Like if you tell any lawyer that you're studying for the LSAT, they're going to look at you with like sympathetic eyes immediately. And they're going to be like, oh my God, I remember that. And that was so hard. So if it feels difficult, like that's because it is. And people like were like at my law firm this summer, like the partners remembered what it was like studying for the LSAT. Like when I said that I was an LSAT tutor, they were like, what? Why would you do that? So just know that like it doesn't come easy to anybody. And anybody who says like it was easy, they're lying, or they have a very high threshold for frustration, because I also always say that the LSAT is really like a test of frustration. It's really just like how much frustration can you put up with before you figure it out. Some people it's worth to put up with a lot of frustration. Some people it's not worth putting up with a lot of frustration. So it really depends on like how much you're willing to admit when you make mistakes. And I think that's kind of the like hardest part of studying for the LSAT, is the part where you have to go back and look at all the things that you did wrong in the last test. And unfortunately, that's the only way you can improve. But the good news is nothing bad happens when you start admitting you make mistakes. In fact, that's actually when you like start improving. But it's very uncomfortable to get there. So if you're in that uncomfortable phase right now, know that's totally normal. Let me go ahead and start going over this question number 1. So for question number 1, and again, I have it on my screen, but I'm looking at Law Hub test 158 and section 4. So for question number 1, the first sentence says, the government's tax collection agency has not followed through on its plan. Now, the sentence continues, but already from just hearing that, I can tell what my conclusion is. My conclusion is that this agency has not kept its promise, has not followed through on its plan. That's a pretty strong statement for somebody to say, so it stands out to me right away. And this is how I have all my students go through the stimulus when they read. You need to be processing as you're reading, not when the sentence ends. So that means if you have to stop in the middle of a sentence to process it and make sure it makes sense, go ahead and stop in the middle of the sentence. It ends up wasting time if you read a whole sentence and then realize, oh, I didn't understand any of that, and then you go back and reread it again. It's just not efficient cognitively. What is efficient is going through and taking pauses and translating as you go. So already just in this first clause before the first comma, I know, all right, this person thinks this agency has not done its job, that they haven't followed through on its plan, to be more specific. Okay, and they said this plan was announced a year ago to crack down on violations of corporate income tax law. Okay, so this person thinks this agency announced a plan a year ago to crack down on corporate tax violations, and this person, the author, thinks that they have not followed through with that plan. Okay, So I already can tell that's an opinion. And I know so anytime you get an opinion, that's going to be a conclusion. So I know this is a conclusion. So let me find out why this person thinks this. Why does this person think the agency has not followed through on its plan? And they tell us in the second sentence. The second sentence says, audits are the primary tool for detecting such violations. Okay. And over the past year, not a single audit of corporate income tax returns has been completed. Okay, so in this last sentence, what they're telling us is the author believes the agency has not followed through on its plan because within the past year, there hasn't been one audit of income tax returns. So after I finish reading a stimulus, I have my students repeat or translate, summarize, paraphrase back what they read. So if I were to summarize what I just read, it would be that this author believes that the agency didn't follow the plan they announced last year to crack down on corporate tax violations. Okay. And the reason they don't think they followed through on this plan is because within the last year, there have been no corporate income tax audits. Okay. So the thing that jumps out to me, there's two things that jump out to me. And this is my process of thinking for every single question. I am analyzing the conclusion and the premise. So what stands out to me is in the premise, they're talking about corporate income tax audits. In the conclusion, they're saying they didn't follow through on the plan to crack down on corporate tax violations. What I notice is that both the conclusion and the premise, what they have in common is the reference to a year ago. And so every time you read a stimulus, you want to be looking for what things do the premise and conclusion have in common? What things do they not have in common? Because for a premise to support a conclusion, it has to connect to it somehow. If they're talking about two different things, that's something that you can weaken. Here, they told us that audits detect violations, so they connected audits to violations. So we can't weaken it that way. But I noticed that both of these say a year ago. So automatically my LSAT antennas are going up. And I'm thinking possibly our answer choice would have to do with that time frame because it shows up in the conclusion and the premise. Remember, the LSAT writes these stimuli for the test. So they create it with you in mind. And sometimes that's for your benefit and sometimes that's not for your benefit. But what that means is that the more patterns you recognize, the better and you're going to do with the questions and less overwhelmed you feel. So, one pattern that shows up is if they bring up a time frame within the conclusion and in the premise, that will probably, perhaps, show up in the answer choices. And I say that because every time before I go to the answer choices, I do a prediction. And if you're just joining, feel free to let me know in the chat if you're studying for the LSAT right now. And you can ask me any LSAT questions. I've been going live on TikTok a lot. I'm going to trying out going live here. So help keep me here if this is helping. Okay, so one rule to lock away in your brain. If they bring up a specific time frame in your conclusion and premise, your antennas should go up and you should be thinking that might show up in the answer choices. Okay, so this question asks, which one of the following, if true, most weakens the argument? Okay, so I'm going to go through our answer choices, and my prediction and what I'm looking for is there one that talks about a year ago? So what I would do on the test, and this isn't necessarily how I teach my students to start, but what I do on the test is if I'm thinking about something, if I have a prediction, I'm going to go just scan the answer choices right away to see if what I'm talking about is there. So if I'm looking at question number 1 and I scan, I want to see if there's any answer choice that talks about the time frame, because that's what I predicted. So answer choice A says the plan to crack down on violations of corporate income tax law is part of a broad campaign against corporate misconduct. That doesn't bring up my time frame, so I'll come back to it if I need to. The second answer choice says the number of personal income tax returns audited over the past year is greater than in previous years. Well, again, first, the answer choice is about personal income tax returns. Our stimulus is about corporate income tax returns, so automatically I'm going to say no to B. If I go to C, again, I'm looking to see, is there anything that picks up on this idea of the year being important? If I go to C, it says most audits of corporate income tax returns do not reveal any significant violations. Okay, it didn't pick up on the year period that I was hinting on, so I'm going to just check D. Answer choice D says it generally takes longer than 1 year to complete an audit of a corporate income tax return. Okay, that brings up the 1 year. Now let me check to see, would this weaken it? Well, let me think about if this was true. If it takes longer than 1 year to complete an audit of a corporate income tax return, is it, I'm going to say fair, but I mean, like, is it logical? Is it fair to say the agency's not doing its job because it hasn't completed a corporate income tax audit in the past year? I don't think so. If it generally takes longer than 1 year, that's another explanation for why there haven't been any income tax audits completed in this past year. And answer choice D directly affects the conclusion, because then it makes it even less reasonable to say they didn't follow their plan if they only announced the plan a year ago and it takes more than a year to do an audit. And so answer choice D does prey right on that framing of the 1 year period. Let's take a look at our other answer choices, though, and talk about why they don't fit. So let's look at E, and then we'll come back to A. But if we look at answer choice E, answer choice E says, over the last 5 years, and already as soon as I see that, and you want to start learning to have quick reactions on the LSAT. So you might notice, and this works for some people, sometimes it doesn't. You might notice I stop myself in the middle of sentences. It's because I'm processing as I'm reading rather than reading then processing. So anyway, I see over the last 5 years, immediately I'm thinking, well, our conclusion and premise only talked about 1 year, so this doesn't even sound relevant. But I'll still read it. Over the last 5 years, fewer audits of corporate income tax returns have been completed than in the preceding 5 years. Still doesn't affect the conclusion, which the conclusion was saying the agency isn't following through on its plan. The evidence that it wasn't following through on its plan. And hi guys, if you're just joining, If you follow me on TikTok, hello. If you don't, I'm trying out YouTube streaming. So please like and let me know if this is helpful. Answer choice E goes beyond the 1 year window. And so that's why answer choice D, saying it generally takes longer than 1 year to complete an audit of the corporate income tax return. And let me know in the chat if you want me to start over with this question too. I can start over with it too. But answer choice D is the one that preys upon the conclusion. The conclusion is the agency isn't doing its job. The evidence for that is that they haven't done any income tax return audits in the past year. What if there was another reason that they haven't done any corporate income tax audits? Is it simply that they're just failing their job? Is that the best conclusion to draw from knowing that they haven't done any tax audits? It's not. What they're saying here is essentially they're saying that the agency isn't even trying. So we want to try to see, is there an answer choice that shows maybe the agency actually is trying? And that's what answer choice D does. Answer choice D says it takes longer than 1 year to do an audit. So it's not fair to say the agency just isn't following through with its plan. So let me know if you have any questions about that one. And the general process that I go through for my questions with my students is honestly the same for every single question. And it's a little different than I know other tutors or LSAT prep programs do. But I have my students process each question the same way, because switching back and forth between your methods throughout the test makes it really hard to be efficient and to create a replicable process. So you want a process that you can repeat over and over and over again. And that's actually why my username is LSAT machine, because I joke with my students that you need to become a literal LSAT machine. It doesn't matter whether it's scientific subject matter or historical, political subject matter. It doesn't matter how complicated or confusing it is. You just have to become a machine with logic and just put the puzzle pieces in the right places. And so that's a little bit about how I approach all my LSAT questions. So you might notice that I'm not going through step 1, necessarily step 2. And the reason is because I like to teach my students to learn the underlying logic concepts first. So the really simple ones. With really simple examples. So if you check out my TikTok, I have a lot of videos of or posts about just really simple logic examples, like necessary and sufficient indicators, and conditions and assumptions and examples of that. And once you understand those with simple examples, then it becomes so much easier to apply it to full LSAT questions. And so by learning the logic concepts first, you can master the logic. And then once you get to applying it on the LSAT, when you see LSAT questions, you are not working on mastering the logic, you're working on mastering the way the LSAT is written. Because this is something I remind my students of a lot too, is that like the LSAT isn't written normally. Like the stimuli and the passages in the LSAT, like that's not how things are typically written out in the real world. And there's a reason, because it's freaking confusing. The LSAT, every single stimulus, every single sentence is written to trick you. So if you're feeling frustrated, like, oh, I should be getting this should make sense, like it shouldn't. It's literally written to not make sense. Or I should say, to not feel like it makes sense. And I mean that like in the most specific way, like the LSAT, I'm telling you, the writers know exactly like how to put the word most in a sentence, but they know that your brain will overlook it if it's like in between these two words. They know that if they put this certain phrase at the end of the paragraph, you're going to remember it as this way. So if you don't go back and check it, or you don't have a note jotted down, they know your memory is going to remember it incorrectly. They know that the way they structure sentences makes a sound another way. That's not just coincidence that these sentences are confusing. It is literally like the point. So, like, what I think it's really important to like have that mindset, because then you know you're doing something difficult. It literally, like, the test is difficult, it's not you. It's literally written to mess with our brains. And if this is helpful, definitely please like and share. I do want to start going live on YouTube more. Yeah. Okay, let me go ahead and I'll take a look here at our second problem. Okay. So this is from the second problem. Oops, let me fix this so I can. Says what test we're on. Okay. All right. So now I'm looking at question number 2. So question number 2 says,